Welcome to Fad Dads. On today's episode, Nathaniel and I are discussing the recent released Eternals film.
Yeah, and this movie is super exciting. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to this movie, the plot, the characters. Does this movie ask the question, does God exist? Does this movie qualify for the Bechdel test?
Yeah, we discuss humanity's worth, super deep questions that every human being contemplates throughout their lifetime.
Questions that can only be answered by the Eternals. All this and more on this episode
of the Fad Dads.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Fad Dads Podcast.
Welcome to the Fad Dads. I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Seth.
And this is the podcast where we talk about movies
And TV shows.
and kind of whatever we want. Mm-hmm. And today we are going to talk about the Eternals.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we launch into our spoiler-full discussion?
Yes. And to be honest, for most of you, if you haven't seen it, don't watch it. Go ahead and listen to our spoiler review, and you will be happier for us saving your time. Time spent listening to our podcast is time saved watching this film. So, take it away.
Okay, so I want to kind of go, I think the best way to kind of structure this conversation is kind of go character by character.
Fair enough.
Because I think that they play integral roles in both the plot and the themes that I kind of want to break down.
Okay.
All right, so actually, one of the things I want to do is hop into the review portion of the segment first.
Sure.
Which we normally have it at the end, but I want to have it up front here.
Okay.
So for the review, always I got to go to the Rotten Tomatoes. Got to go for Joseph. He's just a regular guy on Rotten Tomatoes, just like you and me. He gives the film 5 stars. He says, great story and a diversity in cast. All right.
So that actually echoes my review.
Okay. All right.
Mine is a bit longer because it was written up by Mimi Wong, who writes for Mediaversity Reviews.
Okay.
And the way she rates her films is not on the quality of the film itself. It is in the diversity of the film itself. So, just as a summary of her review, she does rate the technicality of the film, and so this would be all encompassing. I think this would encompass the set, the story, the design. She gives it a 3.75 out of 5.
Okay.
It's up there. Okay. Now, her second rating: gender, 5 out of 5. Race, 5 out of 5. Bonus for disability, because Ridloff is deaf and Thena has a mental sickness. Positive, half a point. And it also gets a little bonus boost for being pro-LGBTQ, plus 0.25 because Fastus is gay. All right, so she says her media diversity grade is an A, 4.83 out of 5. That is how she rates her films, and she has some pretty... she gives explanations for each of these things. So yeah, if you want to dive deeper into her thoughts, you can go read her review on Eternals at Mediaversity Reviews. But anyways, so Nathaniel, I don't know, what do you think?
Well, okay, so we're on the topic of diversity, and the nice thing is with a film like this is there's so many characters, and so sometimes it's really helpful to have like, whether it's gender stereotypes or racial stereotypes, is that whenever we get confused, we can always just rely that go back on the white guy is the villain. So right, the straight white guy is the bad guy. At least it helps clear things up, right? Because Icarus is the surprise villain, and he is the guy with the Superman godlike powers, and so he is definitely the villain. So yeah, I appreciate how easy Disney has made it so that if I ever were confused, we got that straightened out. By the way, I don't know if he struck you as being a block of wood. And I'm not trying to criticize the actor at all, but boy, I thought the performance was really stiff. And I don't know if that was direction or whatever the case may be. But
he flies, he shoots lasers out of his eyes. I think when the actor looked at the script, he thought it might be Superman. So he said, you know what? I'm going to bring my Superman, and I think he did it pretty well.
Yeah, but like no emotion at all.
Exactly.
He's like, Cersei, I love you.
So I'm gonna paraphrase Mimi's little bit on his character, and she had the same point that it was his. She never used the phrase toxic masculinity.
Okay, all right.
But it was precisely the physically dominant character that was not the leader at the end, and she applauded the movie for that.
Right.
And it's kind of like, I mean, everyone agrees, but like that doesn't make a good film.
Right. And exactly. So I think you have a couple of issues there, which is definitely, Disney and just the culture of saying, hey, look, these traits have been dominant in our society for a long time. And you know what we want to do is flush that down the toilet and create a whole new value system.
Right.
And we're definitely going to get more into that as well. And I think this is also representative of Cersei, I guess the main character, but if we're talking about blocks of wood, and I don't know this actress personally, right? I don't know the other guy. Boy, but there's a scene where the emergence is happening, and she looks up at the emergence, and she has no emotion on her face whatsoever. It's supposed to be this awe moment, and there's nothing there. And I'm not saying she's a bad actress. It could have been directing. I don't know, but in this role, she has like no range whatsoever. At least none that I pick up on.
Right.
And there's also another issue is there's a big to-do about Ajax making her the leader, giving her the chance to speak to the Celestial.
Right.
And people are she's constantly wondering, why was I chosen as leader? And everyone else is like, well, she was chosen as leader, but Icarus, we should follow you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even make sense. Like, why is she leader? I have no idea. She doesn't exhibit any traits of leadership. It's basically, and you see this occasionally with stuff, and it's the chosen one type of thing, where they don't earn it, they don't use it, they don't deserve it, and yet everyone's like, "Oh, you're so great, you're so great." That doesn't translate at all in this movie.
Yeah. So something that kind of drawed my attention to that whole dynamic was in Mimi's review. She points out that Marvel had their first love scene in this film between Icarus and Cersei. And so following their characters, it doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be this sort of dynamic between like the masculine energy on through Icarus, and then somehow like she kind of, for whatever reason, like you pointed out, like she's chosen as the one who kind of comes out as the leader. And you're right, it doesn't really make sense. Their whole love thing doesn't make sense. It doesn't contribute to their characters. It doesn't ever resolve itself in any way that makes sense. It doesn't come. It's not important to the rest of the film. It's referred to back a couple of times when Jon Snow meets Icarus, and it's like kind of that awkward moment, like, ha ha.
He's like, why are you with this schmuck?
But like for the rest of the film, they don't even talk about it. They don't even refer to like, oh, hey, remember that one time that we actually were like in love and everything? It was like, no, it never came up again. So
yeah, and maybe stuff was cut from the movie, but yeah, that seemed like a note that they should have played up a little bit more. Where it's this, the fact that they're like tortured souls because they're apart or together, something in there, and it definitely left something to be desired for sure.
Yeah, and they were kind of playing out like, well, Cersei was chosen, so Icarus must, like, we all want to follow Icarus because he's a strong one, but they didn't choose him, like you pointed out. But Icarus doesn't care, it doesn't seem like, and it's only shortly thereafter revealed that he's actually the villain because he actually wants the emergence to happen, and he actually killed Ajax. He killed Ajax.
So there's this scene, because you're 100% right, because they're arguing, and someone says, well, Ajax made Cersei leader. But then Sprite is like, but Icarus, you're the strongest. And Kingo also wants Icarus to lead. And Icarus is like, I'm not who you think I am. And just kind of walks away. And this is where the screenwriters just baffled me in this movie. Because it's like, if he's the bad guy and he wants to save his friends while also making the emergence happens, why wouldn't he take control? Wouldn't it be more interesting if he takes control, leads them down a path, and then they realize they're betrayed? But instead, he's just the worst, the worst character, because he has no plan. He's just kind of wandering around. has no conviction, right? If he really wanted to stop the Eternals, he would have done it right there in the ship. Oh boy.
Especially if the movie is trying to elaborate on this idea that it's not always the physically dominant that prevails, right? He could have physically beaten Cersei up, right? Because he's the physical, like, dominant male character. Right. And then she has to come through and somehow circumvent that or, like, redirect it and beat him, proving that she is the worthy leader to lead the group.
Yeah. They could have also shown that she was a lot more clever than Icarus, smarter, more graceful, something.
Anything.
Anything. And in the end, what happens is super cliche. Icarus, he flies into the sun because he can't take anymore. Not because he's defeated, but just, and maybe that's probably what they're trying to say, is that, toxic masculinity just needs to go away and melt away in the sun because, when confronted with reality, there's, it just melts away. I don't know. It's honestly, I think it's an embarrassment part of the story.
Yeah. So, but I'm sure him flying into the sun has something to do with that story, the Icarus story,
right?
Which
is kind of interesting because they kind of say like Athena, who's called Athena in the movie, right, is Angelina Jolie's character. She is supposed to be like the inspiration behind the myth for Athena, right? It's like the Eternals are they make up the myth and the legends, and so are today's legends. But then you have Icarus, who's flying into the sun as a reflection of that legend. So it's like, well, what started it? Was it Icarus influencing the legend that influenced Icarus to fly into the sun, or some elements were out of order there with the lore?
See, with the lore, Icarus was the son of a man who was trapped on like a prison island. And so the man puts together, he like makes wings so that they can escape the island, and his son goes too high up in the sky while they're flying, and the wax that holds the feathers together, they melt, and so he falls to his death, right? That doesn't make any sense. Icarus was bestowed this gift of physical superiority, and then he just loses at the end. Yeah. It's not because he had too much ambition. If anything, he didn't have enough ambition. It would have made sense for Icarus if he used the ambition to take over, and then he allowed the rise of the Celestial, and the Celestial comes out and kills Icarus. That makes more sense with the lore than anything else.
Right, exactly.
So, anyways, that aside.
And then the screenwriters are like, don't think about it too much. Don't think about it too much. So, while we're talking about diversity, so we have the person who like runs really fast, the woman who runs really fast, and she's deaf, right? And there's a lot of issues that we're going to get to with the Celestial and how bad their plan was. But part of it is, why would you make a deaf warrior? Like that does not actually have any advantages. And we see this in Hawkeye a little bit too. We're actually really like the deaf character in Hawkeye. I don't know if you've seen that yet or not. But,
I have not, no.
So there's a deaf character, and at one point this deaf character says to Hawkeye, who's wearing hearing aids, like, oh, maybe you should not use the hearing aids because you become too dependent on them. And my thought is, you're in no universe are you a better fighter if you are deaf. That does not help you. Now, I like it. I like it in Hawkeye. Like, the disability, I think, makes sense in Hawkeye, and the fact that it makes her a more distinct character. I feel like they just made this character deaf, the fast person, because it's like, we have to make some of these characters have some sort of distinctive trait, so she's going to be deaf. Yeah. And but just as a common sense thing, why would a Celestial make one of their robot androids or whatever they are deaf? It makes no practical sense if they're just fighting machines.
Well, asking that same question, why would they make one of their robot warriors gay?
Well,
and this is where I agree with the reviewer Mimi. Why do they have gender at all? They're a robot. Like the love scene between Cersei and Icarus. Wait, why? Wouldn't that make them like less like effective robots if they get caught up in emotions and all of this stuff? Doesn't that, I don't know,
Yeah, well, okay, let's circle back around that for just a minute. I just want to talk briefly about that, because then we need to camp out there for a bit about the Celestials' plan.
But I think that's a good point, Nathaniel. It makes no sense to give your fighters, your robots, traits that would make them less effective.
Right. So this character is deaf, and she's also a woman. In the comics, though, I don't think this character's deaf, and this character's definitely a dude in the comics. And I think it gets to something, this blatant hypocrisy in Hollywood, where you've heard the term whitewashing, right? Mm-hmm. You see this in Exodus, Gods and Kings, where they casted Moses as Christian Bale, and they cast Ben Kingsley and I think Susan Sarandon as Egyptians, and it has this all-star cast. But then the woke scolds come out and they say, "You're whitewashing. None of those people are actually, Middle Eastern." And Ridley Scott says, "Hey, look, if I cast a bunch of Middle Eastern actors, no one's going to come see this movie." Spoiler alert: no one came to see the movie anyway. But,
all right.
and you might like this one. There's this movie called 21, which is like a casino movie.
Okay.
And because it's actually based on a real life story where, I don't know if it was MIT, but like this college math class, the professor taught the math prodigies how to count cards.
Oh, okay.
In real life, they're all like Asians. All right. But in the movie, though, they're beautiful white people. There's like one Asian dude. Okay.
That's hilarious.
The movie did turn a profit, but people were after them again, saying, "You're whitewashing. How dare you change these Asian people into white people?"
If they made if they cast all those characters as Asian, then they really would have gotten it.
The funny thing is, like the real life guy said, well, at least I would have been more offended if they would have, casted this movie with all Asians, and they would have cast like someone who's Chinese. Because he was like Korean. Don't cast a Korean. Don't cast a Chinese guy when I'm Korean.
Right.
Like, I'd rather you just cast somebody white. Okay, so my point with this is this whitewashing thing goes in one direction, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have people who get upset if your daughter buys a Moana Halloween costume because you're culturally appropriating the people of the Pacific Islanders, I guess. And but hey, look, if there's a male character, we can make it female. Why don't we make her deaf? Whatever, I don't care. If it's Nick Fury and it's white and he's white in the comics, let's make him black. I don't care. And you see this all the time. Now, I honestly don't care, especially if the story works. This is where it's better. I actually don't care that she's deaf or that she's a woman and not a dude. It makes no difference to me. But the issue is when they get offended on the flip side.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if those people really have a lot of credence. I think maybe their voices are louder because it's Twitter, and that's how it just. I don't know how that's how the algorithms work, but I feel like I've never really met someone who cared.
If they made Rhodey white, do you think people would get upset? Because he's black in the comics.
Is he?
They casted him as a white guy.
There would be an outcry, but would anyone actually care? At this point in he's been black up to this point. Right. So if they switched it, I think anyone would cry out if they recasted, almost any character. But
even if there was an obscure black character in the comics, and they made him white, you think there would be? I'm
trying to think of someone. Think of like a good example.
I promise we scraped the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, I know.
Right. Even as a Marvel fan, they've really gone to town on this. Like there's I think like the X-Men, Bishop or Storm or something like that, where I think
Storm.
Yeah, I mean, and the Storm is distinctly African, and which is fine. Mm-hmm. But if you change it to a white girl, I think people would just lose their minds.
Maybe they would.
We're just going to change this.
You might be right.
We're just going to change this person to a chick and make her deaf.
Yeah,
that's fine. It's like, like I said, I don't honestly care. But the double standard, I think we just got to point it out. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think it's fair enough. I agree with you there. There would be a lot of outcry. Frankly, I don't know that many people who really care that much either. But I think you're probably right.
Well, because this review that you got from Mediaversity, right? They're counting diversity. And I bet you, if what character was flipped from white to black or male to female or female to male.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Mimi would,
she'd dig the movie. It wouldn't be 3.75 stars.
She would be in our comment section.
So you mentioned the Celestials plan. What do you think about the Celestials plan and how they carried it out?
The Celestials plan.
So right, they unleashed the deviants on the world to try to get rid of predators, but then instead the deviants lose control over, or the Celestials lose control of the deviants, and the deviants start attacking the people.
I have more questions about the deviants than I did about the Celestials plan. Celestials plan I was fine with. You plant a seed inside of a planet, which is interesting.
Yeah,
it's comic booky, fair enough.
Yeah, but it's okay. I was with it.
When the Celestial comes out, everyone dies. Okay.
Okay, all right. I gotta pause you here because this just drives me crazy. And on a rewatch of this movie, parts of it, I just made my mind just.
You
blow.
rewatched it?
Well, hey, look, I wanted to make sure I wasn't
Props to you.
I wanted to watch some parts of it.
Okay.
So the plan is that when the Earth's population gets to a certain amount, the emergence happens, Celestial comes out and destroys everything, and then creates all these new universes, right?
Right.
Okay. When the snap happens from Thanos, right, we're told that it sets the plan back, right?
Right.
Okay, but now that the snap has unhappened, the emergence is on schedule. Okay. But I remember talking to you about this, is that when he emerges, though, like you don't see like the life forces of anybody like disintegrating. Like, what's the point of the population? How did you draw power from that? Why does it have to be that way? Okay. And now I know you're thinking, oh, that's pretty weak sauce. In the movie, their plan is to put the Celestial to sleep so they can do what? Delay the emergence. So that they can use space colonization and get everybody off of the planet before the emergence happens. How is the emergence going to happen if everybody's off the planet? Does that make any sense? Right? If the emergence is predicated on the Earth's population, and their plan is to evacuate it, how does the emergence still happen? To me, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe you can explain it.
Can I be completely honest?
Okay.
I think I might have zoned off for that part of the film. If that was their plan, I completely missed it.
That's why I watched it twice.
I'm gonna be honest. The final fight. And the emergence started happening, and Cersei says, "I need to be closer to the volcano." I didn't know why. I had no idea. I feel like I'm such an awful viewer for trying to review this film over here. No, I don't know why. But I think that's a pretty dumb plan. I'm gonna have to cut some of that out. So continue.
Okay, all right. So, like you touched on already, though, the idea that the Celestial is giving their warriors weaknesses and like gender and feelings. It doesn't make any sense.
Right, yeah. Program it to kill deviants. And then you wouldn't have... So, the... Ajax. She falls in love with the humans. And so I think her plan was go out into the world, have your own life experience, and when we come back, tell me what you've learned about the human race. Supposedly, right?
Yeah.
And for those who went out and had actual lives, they fall in love with the human race. And so those people are the ones who decide we're going to save the planet, even after Ajax died. And for those who didn't have that experience with the humans, it was the younger one, Sprite, and Icarus. I'm not sure why Icarus was in that group, but Icarus and Sprite were the ones who said, no, let's complete our purpose and let the humans die. Mm-hmm. I think that set up a pretty unique situation. But I thought that part of the story was probably the best part of this entire film, which I think is my best. That is it. My best of this film is that motivational thread where there was like kind of that deep conflict, right? Where this is your purpose for existence, basically, is to have this emergence of the celestial, and everyone else saying, look, no, I found this other purpose on Earth, and so we're going to protect that purpose and reject the purpose that we were sent here for.
Which is interesting because, right, Ajax is talking to Icarus, and she's like, for millions of years, I've served the Celestials, and I never doubted them. And like, wait, you've never doubted them? For millions of years, you butchered planet after planet after planet? And this one is like, what, are humans so much nobler? Like, this is really humanist. Yeah. And I'm not saying like humanist in the philosophical term. Like, I'm saying humanist in terms of like racist and sexist and humanist. Like, so you know, you would have killed Gamora's people? Or... It's like, jeepers, why do you go with conscience now? It didn't make any sense, especially when their memory is wiped every time. You would think that the Celestials would run into this issue every single time, that someone would always, like, rebel. Because these people, like, all of them, except for Icarus and Sprite, are aghast at the Celestials' plan when they hear it. Like, how could the Celestials not know that when the humans know the plan, or when the Eternals know the plan, they go, that's no good.
Yeah.
How has this not happened before, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's so dumb, it doesn't make any sense.
No, that doesn't make any sense. But I enjoyed it. That was the most compelling part of the entire film. It made some genuine conflict between, I think, Icarus and the rest of the group. That was like, okay, I get Icarus. Him as a villain at that point, I was like, okay, I'm behind. Which, in fact, it was more compelling to me than Thanos was. Because Thanos, it was just kind of like, it was just kind of demented. It was just like, well, I have to save half of the people by killing the other half. And it's like, well, no, you couldn't. Like a lot of people pointed out, you could just double the resources with Infinity Stones instead of doing the opposite. So, you know, Thanos, I was like, yeah, okay. But for Icarus, it's like I'm trying to complete the only reason that I exist as a being is for the emergence of this celestial. That is compelling to me, right? As his motivation for being the villain. Better than I think any other Marvel villain has done.
Maybe so. Yeah.
You think so?
I think that's a good take. But what I do have an issue with...
No, an execution.
No, I think that... Well, yeah, definitely the execution. But Ajax... like, these Eternals have lived for thousands of years.
Yeah.
On Earth. And apparently they can't access their memories, but they could. They've lived for millions and millions and millions and millions of years. Okay. And here, this is... And because we have this conversation, it goes a couple different ways throughout the movie, but basically Ajax kind of sums it up when she's like, I have been around the humans. I have seen their greed and their violence, but I've also seen them love and laugh, and I cannot watch this planet die. All right, so I have a list here. And this took me like 30 seconds to come up with.
Never before nicotine.
Yeah, exactly. I thought of like Nietzsche, Marx, Darwin, Aristotle, Da Vinci, Plato, Edmund Burke, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Anthony Flew, C.S. Lewis, Jordan Peterson, Milton Friedman, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on of genius philosophers who have existed for a small period of time. We're talking about, 50 to 80 years, and then they're dead. Okay? These screenwriters, and I don't want to call them dumb, but this script is so dumb that they make Ajax sound like she gets her philosophy from watching the Disney Channel. It's like you've lived millions of years, and this is the extent of your reasoning for why you should do something you could fit on the back of the back of a movie DVD.
Yeah, I agree. They totally should have had her be like best friends with Jordan Peterson. The humans. They're deeply flawed human beings, eh? And it's so deep you just can't comprehend it. But when you do comprehend it, and then you can't get away from it, oh, that's deep. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That would have been great.
I just thought, boy, this is really terrible reasoning, all up and down the aisle.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because to me, for you and I, as believers, I think we kind of has this idea that, we're made in the image of God, and that because of that, we are better than animals. And so in the philosophy of the film, it kind of skirts around it a little bit, where it's like, well, humanity is something. And like you pointed out, she doesn't do a very good job of elaborating what that is. Mm-hmm. But that's still there. That I think if this was just a planet of deer, right? Would there be an emergence?
I have no idea. Remember, I can't explain the plot of the plan, the physics of it. Right?
Okay,
I can't do it.
That makes no sense. But essentially, these cosmic beings, the celestials, their worth is greater than, 5 billion people. However many people are on this earth. And so it's interesting just to think about, like, in a universe where that's true, where there's another being that is more important than humans, right? Like, I think when I was thinking about it, it was like, well, think about, like, prairie dogs, right? Are 5 billion prairie dogs worth one human? No. I would argue so, right? Would you kill 5 billion prairie dogs to save one human being? I think everyone. Yeah, most people would be like, yeah, I think so, right? So that's kind of like a very deep seated conflict that's kind of happening in the background, where Icarus, like, they don't really discuss that explicitly.
They do a little bit. It's very, very surfacey, like most of the philosophy in this film. It's very much. It's very much Twitter type. It's like a tweet philosophy.
But there's good stuff there, right? This hypothetical creature, this celestial, is worth more. And we see this at the end of the film. He shows up at the Earth and he tells Cersei, "Look, you killed a celestial for these human beings, for these 5 human. You saved 5 billion prairie dogs, and you killed one human to save these prairie dogs. There better be something important about them." So. That aspect of the film, I wish that they had discussed more. It's a pretty deep conversation, and like you pointed out, it's humanist in that it raises the value of humans, which I think is important. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it kind of puts a question mark on what is the worth of a human being.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that there's a couple. The original plan was to put the celestial to sleep, not kill the celestial. Right. And I think that to me seems moral, because I don't think that it's fair to weigh the lives of the humans that exist at that time, 7 or 8 billion humans, versus people or planets that don't yet exist, right? Because they don't exist yet. So why would you kill?
Not even that, but just one celestial, right? Just him as a being, not even the universe that he creates, but just the one being of one.
But I'm not even talking about killing the celestial at that point. I'm just talking about making sure that he doesn't emerge.
Right.
He doesn't gain sentience, assuming that he doesn't have sentience, and like if you can obviously just put him to sleep, so he's a stasis being, and so anyway. But I think the trolley problem is right. You have the trolley full of people, 100 people,
right,
and you have the chance to divert it's going off the cliff. Or to divert the tracks so it hits 5 people and kills 5 people, right? So if the celestial is the 100 people and the 5 people are there, what do you choose? Mm-hmm. And at those circumstances, it always seems like kind of a false choice, because you can create all sorts of like ridiculous scenarios to justify this decision or that decision, to say that humans are less valuable or more valuable or whatever the case may be. And I don't know, I think those situations are kind of silly, and like the Celestials' whole plan is kind of broken and immoral and twisted to begin with. So when you start discussing what's the value of somebody when the dichotomy is based off of a really twisted, messed up plan, it seems like you're starting with a bad premise.
Yeah, maybe so. Still, I think it would have been cool if they had explored that a little bit more.
I agree.
Deep-seated thoughts and issues there. Yeah, right.
And I think you're right, and that's why I keep coming back to the movie can only be as smart as the screenwriters. And once again, I'm not saying they're dumb, but to write Sherlock Holmes, you have to be really smart.
Yeah.
Because you have to create something where you are a lot smarter than the viewer. And I'm watching this movie going, I don't think these screenwriters are particularly any smarter than you and me, or Jim or Joe.
Yeah.
And so when you have that problem, then part of it is a Marvel flick. Your audience is definitely the everyman. You can't get these deep stuff. Although I would say that in some Marvel movies, they do have more philosophical questions than what's presented here.
If they leaned into that, clean up the story a little bit. If they leaned into those issues and made that like the central conflict from the get-go, right? Instead of revealing this in the middle of the film, middle to the latter three-quarter, push it up to the first quarter of the film. Get through with the origins and whatnot. Put this front and center, and then drag each of the Eternals through humanity and say, look at the Holocaust. Look at each of the, the genocides that have happened over the years, right? And are human beings really worth it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's part of the that's part of your and I, faith in Christianity, right? Like, deep down, are we really worth it? Like, there's
answer no. Spoiler.
They're right. There's complete Christ-like story going on here, right? Where there has to be a redemption for all of us. And I think when you look at history, it's kind of like, well, humans are pretty awful. You know what I'm saying? And they had an opportunity here where the Eternals are living through history, and they didn't explore any of that at all.
Right.
Maybe they could have made Icarus be the one who says, no, humans are awful. We definitely need to let this celestial emerge and just wipe all of these horrible people out.
Right.
And then, this could have been the best Marvel film for being deeper than anything we've seen.
But in the end, he turns out to be just a masculine jerk. Pretty much. That's how he's depicted. He's not depicted as thoughtful.
Right.
Because, he's not even... He has no mercy, no kindness at all. Mm-hmm. And it's just as unlikable as can be, honestly.
Yeah.
And they could have made him more of a purpose. But instead, he's just the white bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was talking about it, thinking about it. I was thinking about some of those themes, and there are some, in summary, there's just some super deep themes. I really, really wish that they explored more.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I have one little bit to mine from Mimi Wong's review of Eternals. She points out in her 5 out of 5 gender that the Eternals actually passes the Bechdel test.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the Bechdel test?
Is that the test where there has to be like women who talk to each other but not about a male lead? Because I know that's one of the tests.
That is correct.
Okay.
In order to pass the Bechdel test, there's 3 criterias. Does it have at least 2 women in it? Yes, it does. Right. Do they talk to each other? Yes, they do. And the thing that they talk about is something other than a man.
Yeah.
Yes. Very low standard, but I guess there's a surprising amount of movies that didn't pass. And it's funny because the Bechdel test actually has a website, and you can go to it. And they actually have a timeline of movies that do and don't pass over the entire history of cinema.
Yep.
And it's funny because, like, starting out, there's a whole bunch of red where movies weren't passing. And as you get up closer, it's like they start passing a lot more, to where today there's very few movies that do not pass the Bechdel test,
mm-hmm.
right? But just for our convenience, they actually have a list of movies from 2021 that did not pass the Bechdel test.
Okay. You
want to take any ganders at some movies?
All right,
some movies that perhaps you and I have reviewed that do not pass the Bechdel test.
Okay, all right. It's a Free Guy.
Yeah, Free Guy did not pass. Which is it's funny because on the website it's like a messaging board. People actually debate this back and forth. Like, hey, there was a girl at the diner scene and they talked and it wasn't about a guy, so technically it should pass. But I guess there's like some.
It's like a time limit on the conversation or a substance?
No. There's like a little exception that they make where it actually has to be named. If the character has to have a name in order for that character to count. And so since the girl in Free Guy was like, she didn't have a name. She was just like the girl at the bar. Yep. It doesn't pass.
Okay. All right.
And it's funny.
Yeah, I know that scene too.
If you ever want to go and read the message boards, it's funny because it's just like feminists just arguing about the thing that just doesn't matter at all.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. Free Guy's one of them.
Okay, so we have Free Guy. Snake Eyes has got to be on there.
Oh, okay. I didn't find Snake Eyes.
Or maybe it's not popular, but I'm sure that it didn't pass the muster.
It probably did.
Spider-Man: No Way Home has got to be on there.
I think it passed. I didn't list it. I would have been very surprised.
Okay. Let me think about this.
And I think this one we've mentioned before in one of our reviews. We didn't actually review it though. It recent released. Had a certain Rocky figure, who or Rocky character, and the guy from Free Guy. I think he's Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, The Jungle Cruise.
No. The other Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie that came out this year.
Red Notice.
Yes, does not pass.
And Jungle Cruise does.
I believe.
Oh, it does. I know why that does too. I bet you she talks to the shaman villager.
Ah, yes, that's it. Yeah. To get to the moon. All right. I'll read the rest of them off for you. All right. The recently released Pixar movie Luca, I guess, doesn't pass.
Okay. It's about two boys, though.
Yeah, right. I'm not surprised there. It's just like, oh, a Pixar movie. Okay. The Tender Bar that I briefly discussed, I guess, doesn't pass. It was about a boy, so okay. Yep. And then the Tomorrow War does not pass the Bechdel test. So, anyways, I thought that was kind of funny that she brought that up, and I was like, oh, wait, that's really funny. And she gave a link to the website, and so it was kind of funny just being able to go and look at like all these films. Someone actually took the time to watch every movie and say whether or not it passes this completely random and obsolete test. But anyways.
So, you touched on one element of this is the purpose. Mm-hmm. Right? Their purpose was to do this, but they went out in humanity and they discovered a new purpose for them. And so there's the Fastos, is the gay guy who creates the machines and everything like that. It's the first MCU gay character, right? So he has this line, and this is distinctly for him because Icarus says, "I exist for Ersham, and so do you. It's who you are." And he says that to Fastos, right? And then Fastos says, quote, "I wouldn't change a single thing about me, born or made. But I don't exist for Ersham. I exist for my family." And, right, so you can tell that the born and made part is definitely in reference to like the homosexuality part of it, of him, right? It comes out of his mouth. It doesn't come out of anybody else's mouth. Although I understand why it wouldn't come out of the mute girl slut mouth. But anyway. Okay, so, but anyway, I think that he, in that line, sort of represents today's culture where we reject the purpose and roles put upon us. And he's like, you know what? I don't care about this higher calling. I'm going to do what I want to do. And he also, he supplements this by saying, I wouldn't change a single thing about me. Like, you wouldn't change anything about you? Like, I mean, if I were him, I at least would change the fact that I'm like overweight and I would want to lose 50 pounds.
I would change the fact that I don't have Icarus's powers.
Like, I would change the fact that I made these weapons of mass destruction that the humans use to kill themselves. Right? Which he apparently early in the movie he feels guilty about. And I
don't remember that.
But it is this look, I am fine the way I am, right? I'm gay, that's fine. Wouldn't change it. I'm perfectly fine that way. That's good, in fact. And it's this self-definition that's actually, I think, ruining our culture today, where we reject the fact that, when I think that you're right, we're made in the image of God, and we do have this purpose. Now, I agree that Erisham's purpose is kind of sick and twisted, right? But and I think that's part of the point, right? They shape Erisham into this god figure, and they say, look, you're immoral, which we're going to get to in just a minute, because this movie had a major revelation that I'm dying to get to. Okay. But in it, he's just like, you know what? This is who I am. I like it. I don't want any other boundaries from it, and I'm fine this way. And I feel like he is just the perfect picture of our culture today, and Disney throwing him in there is not an accident, but it's purposeful.
Okay. All right. Get to the revelation, Icarus.
All right. Before we get to the revelation, I got to stay on Fastos for a minute, because I really want to talk about him being the first major gay character in the MCU.
Who I feel like, so was there another one that we...
Well, Loki is bi. Right, in the new show.
That doesn't count.
Well, and also there's that scene in Endgame where Captain America's in like a little therapy session, and the one guy, admits that he went out with the other dude, and
Oh yeah, that's right.
okay, all right. So, but he's the first like major gay guy.
Oh right. Okay.
And so Fastos is basically, he is the result of the promise that Kevin Feige made a number of years ago, and said that, look, we are going to, champion LGBTQ people in this film. And so basically he's the result of that. And so here is my issue with that. And my issue with this whole gay overrepresentation in, right, you see the Mimi has this woke or diversity chart. In fact, and we even go back to this initial review about Joseph says great viewed in diversity in cast, right?
Yeah.
There was what do you think the LGBTQ population is in America? Percentage-wise.
Wasn't it like 2%?
Yeah. So the average American, so Gallup polled people, and the consensus was most people think that LGBTQ people make up 20% of the population.
Yeah.
Right.
I was about to say it's either 2 or 20.
So it's like, but that's like one every 5 people you would see is LGBTQ. The number's actually like 5%.
5,
now,
okay.
which is actually up from about 2.5%. And I think those numbers are worth getting into, because that increase statistically is made up all of Gen Zers.
Interesting.
So they're asking all these Gen Zers, and so Gen Zers are like 1 out of 6 identifying as LGBTQ. Now the weird thing is, people would say, okay, as people would say, look, more people are no longer being repressed, and they're able to be free who they are. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is, if that were true, why do we see an overabundance of Gen Zers saying this, but not Gen Xers, millennials, and baby boomers? Mm-hmm. Because you would think that would be consistent throughout the flow. Mm-hmm. And I think, my theory, and many other people have thrown this theory out, and you can look at surveys that Brown University did, where the issue we're looking at is that, right, LGBTQ stuff is like a social contagion with many people, especially many young people, where they're exposed to this and they basically are like turned gay, or they're turned trans because of the messaging that they get from school and media and influencers, to where if they grew up, they wouldn't grow up LGBTQ, but now you get them in their formative years and with all this messaging. And so that's why you see Gen Z turn out this way.
Right.
So the reason that I bring up the Gallup poll, and the reason that I think that the overrepresentation of LGBTQ in Disney, in pop culture, and all these TV shows matters, is because it really does affect the way that people think, and has undue influence, especially over young people, very young people, that they do things and they would go a certain direction that they never would otherwise, and which is why you're seeing this big influx. And so people think that everybody's LGBTQ, 1 in 5, but that's actually not the case. And I think it does have consequences, this attitude that we have.
No, that's okay. That's interesting. And in my experience, because I think I am Gen Z in that group, which is because I 2001.
Yep.
So okay. So while I was in middle school and in high school, Danny and I, we both had a friend, we'll call him, where he was very obviously a straight, and but it seemed like he kind of changed his mind every now and then.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it was really weird, and everyone kind of knew it, and so no one really wanted to call him out on it, but everyone was like, You're kind of faking it, man. And it's weird because a lot of people think that and feel like that. Like that, a lot of it kind of just is like for show. Mm-hmm. Like they don't actually mean it. And so it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And what I think it is, I think Gen Zers just might be having there's an oversaturation, like you pointed out, in culture, in pop culture. And in your formative years, when you're trying to formulate a personality and an identity, and you don't have a solid structure, you're going to gravitate to whatever the most solid structure is, I think. And it seems like what is coming out of culture is that this LGBTQ community is a structure that a lot cling on to because it's being championed. It's it's kind of like you're edgy, right? Like you're kind of on the social, like, if you feel like you don't have a home, it's because you're gay, you know, and we're gonna give you a home and we're going to accept you, right? And so I felt especially for this guy that I didn't know him super well, but I still felt like his home situation wasn't the best, and that he was kind of doing it to get attention, and that he was actually a pretty straight guy. Mm-hmm. But he didn't act that way, and he first he was gay, and then he was bi, and then he started dating a girl, and he was never interested in any guys. So it was just like, you're straight, man. You know, it's okay to say that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think there's something to the data that you're saying. You know, it makes a lot of sense, and I would agree. As far as the movie goes, this character being gay, it didn't add to the story.
No.
But I completely see what you're coming with. You know, where it seems like it might be doing more harm than good in the long term when you put this stuff out into society and say, this is what's important to us, right?
Yeah. I think it's definitely the right part. You know, the major issue that I see is the self-definition part of it, where we define ourselves, and the fact that he's gay is just kind of an outgrowing of that. Or of anybody saying, look, I can define myself. I decide my pronouns. There's objective truth, gender, sex. You know, I don't have to. I throw off the shackles of what's traditionally been thrown on me, on the culture. And like I said, I become pretty much your own god at that point, right?
Right.
Okay, so Seth, you have some awards that you're going to give to this film.
That is absolutely correct. I have 3 awards that we're going to hand out to this film today. And so let me start it off. My first award for this film is the NyQuil Award for the ability to put you to sleep. All right, second award. This is like the Oscars. It's about as exciting as the Oscars. The second award is the Jeffrey Bezos Award for having the ugliest spaceship. Oh, Julie. You know, I kind of cringed a little bit at how ugly the spaceship was. But okay, moving on. The final award in this category, The Eternals wins an Oscar for being an unenjoyable film.
So just like every other Oscar-nominated movie.
Exactly. All right, and this concludes this film's awards, or the awards for The Eternals.
But just circling back to the angry god that is the Celestial, this movie goes out of its way to prove that God exists. I don't know if you caught on that or not.
Really?
Yeah. So if you were to talk to somebody and they have doubts that God exists, what's a reason? What's a big reason that people would say, I don't believe God exists because
God doesn't exist because bad things happen to good people.
Exactly. that evil exists, and a good God wouldn't let evil happen. Right.
Right. Yep.
Right. We've heard this all the time. Right. This is philosophy 101. Right. Everybody's throwing this out there. Right.
Philosophy 101.
But in this movie, you have Druig, who is the guy who can mind control people. Right. And he's seeing these atrocities happen, and he decides to mind control a section of the atrocities, like the conquistadors against the Mayans, who honestly should have been wiped out because of how they were messed up. Like, Mayans, bad people. I'm not saying every Mayan was bad people, but as a culture, Mayans very, very bad. You and I wouldn't want to live in that culture. But Druig is just appalled at the conquistadors and how evil they are. And so he takes control of them. And so there's this quote in the movie, because they find him later on, and Cersei's talking to him because he had kind of like developed his own little village, and people were kind of doing their own thing. It was free will, and she's talking to him, and he says that he has the power, and he wanted to control every human to try to stop their greed and violence. But then he says he didn't do it. And why didn't he just take control of everybody? Is because he said that without their flaws, they wouldn't be human. And this is something that you have to consider, is that free will Is nobody likes to get into the nitty gritty of it, but without free will, we do kind of cease to be human. So, right, you can't say, why would a good God let bad things happen? But if God does give people sentience, if he does give them a free will, that means, freedom comes with the ability to make bad decisions, which we all do. And that's not even talking about original sin or not, but that people would, on a spectrum, sometimes make self-interested decisions, which people do all the time. And that doesn't disprove God.
Right.
It just means that God gave you a free will, and that a good God does not exclude giving people free will. And this movie shows it, is that he says the decent thing to do, the good thing to do, is not to control people so they become robots. It is to let them choose good and evil. So, this is not me saying it. This is the movie saying it.
Yeah. Too bad it was just a little throwaway line, huh? Just like every other good thing in this movie. Wasted.
Exactly.
Nathaniel, I would like to bring us to a little bit of the technical stuff. This is just when I was going through college and I took a little film class. When we dissected a movie, we could start at the basics. Yeah. What does the set look like? What are the costumes?
Apparently, it looks like a green screen. But
yeah, right. So, what did you think of the costumes for the Eternals?
I mean, I definitely see why some people would say they look kind of like Power Rangers.
Yep.
But souped up. I actually thought the suits looked okay. And so this is, you mentioned your best. Kind of my best would be, I liked some of the effects that were used, especially with like Athena, where you have like the gold effects and stuff. Okay, all right. I was like, okay, that at least gives it a little bit of style to the film, and especially I liked the Celestial. They're like, and anytime that they were like on screen, like, oh, that's really impressive. That's good. That's some good CGI work. But I've got a sense that my best's probably your worst.
What was my worst? I found it. Okay, it was not with the costumes. But Nathaniel, I did find a little image of the Celestials in the comics. There's a little picture of what they could look like. All right, and for those who can't see, we have what is supposed to be Icarus, the Superman, and he's in a very Superman-y type outfit. He is shredded to the max. It looks like he does steroids every single day. Icarus isn't so much the problem. It looks like they kind of marvelized his costume pretty well enough. But for the rest of them, they're very out there type costumes. Like, they definitely look like they're on the wacko druggy find on the side of the road in Colorado type of superheroes. And I really wish that they would have done a little bit more of that, because Fastos especially, I'm pretty sure this dude over here is Fastos. That guy. It's weird. I grabbed these pictures to put them next to each other.
Yeah.
Completely random. But I think these characters actually line up to who they represent.
Yeah.
See, like the green character right here is Cersei. Right here.
Yeah.
So Cersei's color in the comics looks like she's green, and so she actually is the only one who has like a green suit. But it's like you said, like kind of Power Ranger-y. Like a very basic 21st century comic book superhero type of garb. And to me, it wrecked it when they were back in history wearing these. It looked so bad. Yeah. Like, they didn't look like cosmic beings who came down to protect Earth. They looked like time travelers who were coming out of the 21st century to go back and protect them in the past. Did you get the same impression?
No, but I can see what you're saying now, and I'm not sure I can unsee it.
It was subconscious. Like, it's not like that's what I was thinking, but it's just like it doesn't feel right that they were in 5,000 BC wearing this. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Well, it definitely for a movie that takes itself so seriously.
Yeah.
When they were in there, it's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This looks absurd.
It does. Okay. And so Fastos, his character is wearing a kilt. And it just kind of has some lines on it, a little bit of decoration. In the comic book picture that I'm looking at, he's this hunky metal dude with a tiny little head at the very top. And he's like a Hulk of a figure, bigger than everyone else, right? That has personality.
Right.
That's cool. All of these characters, they don't physically create any emotion in their look.
Yeah,
they're not intimidating.
They don't have any presence.
Right. Yeah. I would argue like Iron Man had a pretty good presence. The Hulk has a lot of presence, right? His size. I would even argue that like Black Widow, her look complements what her fighting style is, right? It's wiry, it's quick.
Yep.
I feel like these characters, they're just they're all the same size. I don't understand why one of them is a child. That doesn't make any sense. And she's like a Loki spell casting type who can create. Why is she a child?
I'm gonna get to that in just a minute.
Right. So I had a really big issue with these costumes. They were devoid of personality and made me feel nothing for any of the characters. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on no? As for your thing about her Athena's weapony thingy, what's her power again? I don't materializing weapons?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and she's a good fighter.
It's a dumb power. Sorry. All right.
Your basic film school. You're talking about your training.
Oh yeah. So basic film school. So okay, we'll move on from the costumes. Next we'll go to sets. What did you think about the sets?
There were no sets. It was all outside.
Exactly. Yep. And this is where I definitely disagree with Mimi. Mimi said that they were like the director was known for her landscapes, and that there were some impressive ones. So while I was doing some research, I think she said that because there was a couple shots that were set in the Hanging Gardens.
Yes.
One of the eighth wonders of the world. But in any scene that actually has anything going on, there's nothing significant in any of the environments. The first fight scene took place on a beach.
Yep.
And the hero shot was them on a beach.
Yeah.
My favorite, I think, set that they were on was in the forest, and they were interacting with like some of the trees.
But that's so cheap though. It's like you erect a couple of huts and that's your set.
Right. It's pretty bad, but that was the best in my opinion. $200
million movie, by the way.
Sheesh. So at least in the forest, when they're like smashing through trees and stuff, like there's some interaction with the environment.
Yes.
Like when you're on a beach, there's just not much to interact with.
Right.
So that was pretty bad.
By the way, the fighting on the beach is so unique and so good that they had to do it twice in the movie.
Yeah, right. And at the end of the movie, it was 100% CGI set, which I don't know if you remember when we were talking about Shang-Chi. That was one of our complaints about that too. Is at the very end, it just didn't really feel real at the very end. And I felt that very much at the end. The emergence did not look good. It was not convincing to me. I could kind of see what they were trying to do with some of the CGI, like making it look like it was really big, but I wasn't sold on the spectacle.
Okay, I thought it was decent with the hand coming out of the ocean, but you're right. The lack of it didn't feel tactile, and the lack of interactions with the environment, and with how basic. Now, obviously, they went to cool locations to film some of these things, but it didn't translate as like sweeping grandeur, and
some of them didn't make sense. Why was Ajax? Keep forgetting that name. Why was Ajax in Iowa? That's kind of a random place.
She's in North Dakota, but
North Dakota, Iowa, whatever.
Yeah,
and then Cersei was just in London. Just super random places. So, anyways, didn't really like that. And so this brings me to my worst of this entire film. And this is something that I feel like movies need to hit well in order to succeed. And that is the music. The movie closes with the song "Feels Like the First Time" by Foreigner. Does that make any sense to you? When it closed and that song started playing, I almost looked around like, hello, what? It's from the 70s. This movie isn't set in the 70s. We don't even cross any point in time that takes place in the 70s. The vibe, like you pointed out earlier, it's a dark vibe. It's not funny, and it feels like the first time is kind of like a happy song. I have no explanation for why that song was chosen in this film, and it was so off-putting. I chose that as my complete worst. So,
speaking of the end of the movie, my worst has got to be these end credit scenes. I'm sorry. At one time, these were exciting teasers or funny bits of things to come. I've read thousands of comics, especially Marvel.
Okay,
and I can't even tell you what's going on now. We have transcended. Like, I know that the end credit scene with Jon Snow is him becoming the Black Knight, but it's like I don't care anymore. I don't care. They're no longer exciting. Shang-Chi was okay because it had your favorite character Wong. And it also had Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, right? She's in there. Like, okay, this is, at least it's connecting somewhat, but now you have the Star Fox character and the Black Knight. It's like I'm no longer excited anytime I see one of these.
Thanos' brother?
Right, exactly.
Harry Styles?
And exactly, it's like Thanos' brother should be a big deal, just narratively.
Right.
And when he shows up, it's sort of like a joke. And
right.
Like I remember when Thanos appeared at the mid-credit scene in the Avengers, because I was watching it in the theaters, and when he just hit right, he turns his face, and it's like, you lose your mind. It's like, what? And for this, it was no.
Hey, I have an idea. Why don't we? This might be awful. So the guy who played Phastos was Brian Tyree Henry.
Okay,
I've never really heard of him, but maybe he should be playing Star Fox, and Star Fox should be playing Phastos. Because it's Harry Styles. Okay, moving on. Moving on. The Black Knight. So have you read any Black Knight comics?
No, I've read some Avengers comics where he's in there.
Okay. I don't know the character very well. What do you think?
He rides on a winged horse and has a
That's
like
cool.
a possessed...
Like the Valkyrie.
Yeah,
kinda
exactly.
like that? Okay.
And he has like a sword that can talk to him, like it's possessed.
That's
something
kind of cool.
like that.
That was in the end credits. I didn't watch the end credits scene.
Yeah. So that was. Did you watch this movie?
Yeah,
I have my doubts.
I promise I did.
Were you awake through all of it?
I was. Okay, so I did see someone talking about the end credits scene after I watched the movie, and there was something weird about the sword's metal or something like that. What's special about it?
I don't know. And this is the problem, is it's getting too obscure. And like the Black Knight, unless they super him up somehow, he's like literally just a dude in a suit of armor with a horse that can fly and a sword that can talk.
Okay.
And like we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like Rocket Raccoon, I could tolerate, but now we're just, it's too much.
Oh, Rocket Raccoon, yeah, he's fun. He's a good character. Yeah, Jon Snow. If he's going to be a major character, I wish they did a little bit more with him being a little bit more special. Yeah, but I could get behind that. Jon Snow in the Marvel Universe being Jon Snow. That would be kind of fun. Yeah. I don't know, Nathaniel. I wasn't very excited about Shang-Chi. I'm not excited about these Eternals. Are we looking at like a phase? What is it? Phase 4 now? Marvel films are just going to be no good from here on out. Like they've got some good ones that we still like. We like Spidey. We like Guardians isn't gone yet. We still like Guardians. I still like Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange might be pretty good.
We got some good ones, but this seems like it's like the up and coming generation of Marvel characters, and I'm not seeing too many that I like here.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I also think that origin stories can be pretty rough. Doctor Strange, his first movie, I thought is pretty forgettable. Yeah. And right, Shang-Chi's pretty forgettable, but maybe once they get past like the origin part of it, they're gonna have a little bit of footing and they'll be able to do some good. Yeah. I'm hopeful that's the case because I'm just not excited about a lot of the stuff that's coming out for sure.
I really like how Marvel is doing like these cross stuff. Like how they had Doctor Strange in the Spider-Man film. Right. It seems like they're going to be doing that quite a bit, and I like how they're taking that approach. It's something different. Yeah. And I remember seeing a little bit about Kevin Feige talking. So he was asked the questions like, hey, after these Avengers films, which is like we're putting all the superheroes in one film, like what's going to be like the next big thing? Like what are we going to do? And he said, you know what? The Avengers is probably going to be the very last big epic gathering of superheroes we're going to do. From here on out, we're going to do some more character study type stuff, and we're going to try to do, or I don't know if you say character study, but like we're going to try to make combinations of these characters in their own films. We're going to have them cross paths and do different things, and it's going to be more interesting that way. And so I remember hearing that like almost 8 years ago and thinking, oh, that doesn't sound very interesting. But I like how it's played out in other movies, not Eternals, not Shang-Chi, but in how they've been combining them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess without something to look forward to, it makes me less interested to have to see all these terrible installments, though. Yeah. Right? Because this movie was tough. It was not good. And I'll give you one more example of how this movie is just awful.
Go for it.
You mentioned Sprite, and why does she have to be a child? Maybe she was a child in that, but that's actually the fact that she's a child is a part of the movie because she has this longing to be like an adult. She feels like she's held back because everyone else can live a life, but she can't because she's a little kid. What's her power? She has like the power of illusions, right? Because she can change what people look like and things.
That's right. So this was explained in an explainer video. She has the power that is opposite of Loki's.
Okay.
Where I think for Loki, he casts a projection.
Okay.
And it's independent from him.
Okay.
She casts projection, but it's dependent on her. So if she like I think we see at some point in the film where like she gets hit or something like that, and her thingy disappears because she's being affected by it. Whereas Loki, if the real Loki got stabbed, his projection would stay alive for a little bit longer because it's not dependent on him.
Right.
I guess at some point in Loki's show. Why did I figure what it was called? In Loki's show, he explained that. And it was like a funny bit where he explained it in depth, and everyone was just like, what? What are you talking about? Do you remember that?
I don't. It's been a year. Or not quite a year, but it's been a while since we talked about that show. But if that's the case, why doesn't she just create an illusion over herself?
Oh, don't think too much about it. Don't think
because
too
it
much.
doesn't make sense. Because the conflict of her character is that she can't even love anybody because she just looks like a kid. But just look different. Just look like Angelina Jolie if you want to. Like, stop it. And also, the final blow is that she's lived millions of years, and she finally has wish fulfillment when Cersei gives her the gift of aging normally. And what does she do? She goes to school. I don't know. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Okay.
All right, folks, thanks for listening with us and sticking through this conversation. I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Seth.
And this has been
The Fad Dads.